Welcome, everybody, to Survive and Advance on the Girly True Sports Network. I'm your co-host for Survive and Advance, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, 1981 national champion, member of the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, 1979 NIT champion, and 1977 Indianapolis Regional champion, Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
Superlatives, man. What's with you today? You need something from me today?
I'm just in a good mood.
There you go. Well, good to be here, Mike.
All right. See, I left you at a loss for words. Our guest today.
Good to be here. Not talking about the New Orleans Saints getting screwed by a call.
Our guest today.
Tired of that. Tired of that crap too.
I'm going to try this one more time and see if Steve will be quiet.
But there was some dramatic turns of events on Young and the Restless yesterday. It was a big day.
Well, the Young and the Stupid. Why do you watch the Young and the Restless? Because you would want to watch the old and the bedridden.
Well, because it's either watch Young and the Restless at home when my wife comes home and kind of flip through it as we're kind of relaxing a little bit and talk about the day, or we sit and watch the idiot Congress and Trump go at each other. And I really just think the Young and the Restless probably is more productive because it kind of gets toward a storyline and a plot. Now that we've spent $7.5 billion since the shutdown when he only wanted $5 billion to build the wall, so we're going to give him this damn $5 billion, build this damn wall, and then we still be paying people and they still be working and employed. You see, that's the insanity of our government.
All right, so our guest today from Fansided,
and then of course brackets. The Democrats. Wait, and then, the Democrats. The Democrats say they want the Statue of Liberty to be the symbol of our country. Okay, well, fine. Then let's make them all come to Ellis Island and become citizens of our country through the Statue of Liberty, not cross the Rio Grande and make that be the symbol of our country.
All right.
Move on.
Okay. Hopefully our guest is still there. We've got from Fansided Busting Brackets, Brian Rauf. And Brian, I think the big thing here is I think that I have launched a new soap opera, The Old and the Bedridden. What do you think?
I think that would probably draw a little bit less viewers than Young and Restless, but still a good competitor.
Oh, I think it's a great competitor. People like Steve can watch it. They can relate because he's old and bedridden. All right, let's start off. College basketball. We'll start off in the SEC. And there's two things that stand out to me. That's the Kentucky Wildcats got a big win on the road against a very good Auburn team at 82-80. And LSU looks like they're on fire right now. And the SEC has to be at least one of the top 2 or 3 conferences in the country right now.
I would agree. I think they're maybe a step or two behind the Big Ten and ACC, but, I mean, they're right there. I've been telling you guys about LSU for a couple weeks now. About to watch out for them. They have a ton of talent, a schedule that sets up really, really well for them. They're not going to really be tested for another 2, 3, 4 weeks, not until mid-February. So they're going to be a team that is going to be able to rack up a lot of conference wins. And as Tennessee and Kentucky start getting into some tough stretches and playing some of the better teams in the SEC, LSU might end up being in first for a while. So it's going to be a really fun race to watch down the stretch.
All right. I thought Steve was going to say something there, but he's not. So let's go to the Kentucky Wildcats. And I think John Calipari. I'm going to ask a question.
Quiet,
you just be quiet. You had your chance and you missed it.
Well, let me just
John
Calipari.
No.
The SEC is strong or not? No, hang on.
The SEC is strong.
It's a balanced conference. All right, and I'm not sure it's at the level like Brian said. It's not at the level of ACC or Big Ten. Actually, I'm not even sure the Big Ten's that good, truthfully.
No,
you're
the
seeing
SEC
two teams
is
totally
better
separate
than the
themselves
Big Ten.
out. But I believe what the SEC is doing right now, they've got an incredibly balanced conference, with the exception of Tennessee. They're clearly the top dog in that conference. Everybody else is just pretty well, cream of the crap, middle of the pack teams that aren't going to fare well in the tournament. And they'll, it looks pretty now because they all feel like we're back to the SEC football where everybody's duking it out with each other. But in the end, Tennessee's the only team, maybe Kentucky, because they got a pedigree of getting in the tournament. But other than that, I don't see any other really strong tournament team emerging out of the SEC.
Well, I think LSU is.
Now
They're
move
14-3. They're undefeated in the
Oh,
conference.
LSU's making a run right now. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're playing cream of the crop. I mean,
Mississippi, Auburn, Mississippi State.
Right.
Alabama beat Kentucky not too long ago. So, yeah, I think this is a
Right,
tougher
like I said,
conference. This is a tougher
Balanced
conference than the Big Ten.
Yeah, I agree. It's balanced. It's better balanced.
LSU, I would put in there. I would put LSU in the conversation with Tennessee and Kentucky as teams that can make a run from the conference, only because of just how much sheer talent they have. When they lost their 3 games earlier in the year, they were to good teams, but they're a team that's pretty much all freshmen and sophomores, and most of the contributors, or their JUCO transfers who have been not used to playing at this level yet. And we saw a lot of that youth and experience hurt them in those games, and now they've kind of started turning the corner and are executing sharper, making better decisions, sharing the ball more. They're learning how to play together. And so we're seeing that just sheer talent level show itself now that they're used to playing together and have ironed out some of their games.
LSU's never going to be great again until they bring back Dale Brown.
Whatever. LSU could have been great if they wouldn't have had Del Brown, because he was a great recruiter that couldn't coach. And when you look at John Calipari right now, Brian, this is a guy that, is proven he can coach right now. He's taken some guys that were basically a cluster earlier in the year. They played a really easy schedule, and now they look like they're one of the top 10 or 15 teams in the country.
This is definitely one of the best coaching jobs he's done in his career. The way he's managed the lineup and the rotations and played with it until he's found something that works now, with Tyler Harrow being in the starting lineup consistently, being their starting point guard and giving them a real defensive identity at the point. We knew this team was going to progress just because, again, of how much talent they had and how young a lot of that talent was. Quade Green transferring out, this sort of happened around that time. And I think it sort of cleared up that logjam in the backcourt for them and gave everybody more defined roles, which Calipari certainly used to his strength, and everyone they know what they are this year, and they've been able to kind of work at that and improve instead of working to figure out who they are, and we're seeing that progression now.
All right, let's go to the ACC, because the team that stands out here to me is North Carolina, and Steve's going to say something stupid because he doesn't like North Carolina, even though they beat him in the 1981 National Championship. But 103-82 win over Virginia Tech. They look good on Saturday also in a win. Nasir Little, a freshman, seems like he's rounding out. I think this North Carolina team can make some noise now.
I have been very high, or I shouldn't say that. I was very high on UNC in the preseason. They were my preseason pick to win the national championship just because of all of the different ways they could beat you. They have a very versatile roster. They can play big, play small, play fast, play slow. But early on in the year, really up until the past 2 weeks, Roy Williams seemed to refuse to do anything other than what he wanted to do or what he had done in the past, and this team wasn't necessarily built for that. Nasir Little's progression has certainly helped. He now looks like he knows what he's doing. He's out there on the court, and he's playing and reacting instead of just thinking, which I think limited him early in the year. He was still learning the game, defensive rotations, kind of what to do, how to play in an offensive set as opposed to just going one-on-one. That progression has helped. But in terms of what we saw last night, I think that was more of Virginia Tech being somewhat fraudulent. They don't have really any good wins this year. They have a couple of K ones, but they haven't proven themselves at all, and still had that lofty ranking simply because they hadn't played anybody yet. But in their last 2 big games, they got the doors blown off them by both Virginia and UNC. So you got to kind of start to wonder how good Virginia Tech is.
All right. Now this is where you would say something, Steve.
Oh, well, I think what you're seeing now is you're getting about, I'm mesmerized by Brian's brilliance. Genius, pure genius. I'm actually looking at ESPN's college basketball website. It's pretty cool. I've never looked at this thing before. They got a lot of neat stuff on here. Bracketology and everything. I like bracketology. Let's pick the brackets right now. Why are we going to wait for the conference championships? Let's just pick them right now. Be done with it. Start the tournament.
So, obviously, what I'm learning here is you have no question.
Yeah, I have a question. No, I don't have a question. I just got a statement.
Did you make one up?
I think what you're seeing right now is what we see every year is the power teams, the same teams that always end up being in the Sweet 16 for the most part. There's always years where they flop out for one reason or another. Virginia last year to UMBC. But these teams now start dialing in now. They're halfway through. The Big Ten season is just about halfway over. I think, Indiana's 4-3, so you got 3 games left. By the end of this week, the Big Ten season will be halfway through the Big Ten season, so I assume most other teams are the same. You're starting to see the North Carolinas, the Michigan States, the Kentuckys, the Kansases, the teams that you usually expect to be there. They start dialing it in now. They're done putzing around with their pregame schedules, and they're tinkering and toying with things, and they're just dialing in. And those teams are all going to end up at the end of the ranking system. You're going to see all those teams back up on top again, and the LSU's and the players, not the players, will fall by the wayside. Mississippi States, they'll get in the tournament. They'll get a seed somewhere, and they'll be early out. But you'll see the power teams once again, because they've got good coaching, they've got tradition, they've got history. They'll repeat themselves. North Carolina will be fine. It's a solid basketball team. They're still a well-coached team, although I don't know that he's the best coach out there anymore. But Roy's still good, and you'll see them all just come up to the top. Now it's going to be a dogfight between these top teams that emerge throughout the second half of the season.
All right, so you didn't.
My story, and I'm sticking to it.
You didn't have a question in.
No.
You just made a statement. We bring a guest in to ask him questions because he's more of an expert than you are at college basketball, and that's obvious every time you open your mouth. And you didn't even ask a question.
That's questionable.
It's not questionable whether you ask a question or not. It's just not. And it's not questionable if you know as much. Wait a second. You may know more about Brian college basketball-wise in the 1980s, but I don't think you do now. It's not even close.
Okay, move on.
All right. So, the team that intrigues me in the ACC is Louisville. Blew out North Carolina at North Carolina, BPC, blew out Georgia Tech. How good is this team, and does this not prove Indiana should have hired Chris Mack instead of Archie Miller?
I think Archie Miller is going to be fine.
But he's not Chris Mack.
He's not Chris Mack, but I don't think he's too far behind. I think both of them are really good coaches and are going to have those programs that are playing at a really high level sooner rather than later.
Well, Louisville already is.
Well, what he's done this year at Louisville has been incredible. I don't think that Louisville can be consistently as good as they were when they blew out UNC. I think that was the best that group could have possibly played, and were aided by a really flat effort from UNC. But that was the best they could have played. They're still, as hard as they play and as much as they've improved defensively, there's still a very hard ceiling for them talent-wise that they're not able to overcome against some of the better teams on most nights when they're not playing like they were against UNC, just because everything that's gone on there and they're kind of in this transition period. Chris Mack has done a great job getting the set of those guys, but none of those guys are necessarily guys you look to and say, yeah, you would count on to carry you. They're the definition of a team that's the sum of their parts is greater than the 5 individuals. They'll be fine to make the tournament. I could see them winning a game in the tournament, but I think eventually they're going to run into that hard talent ceiling that they have, where they can't. It's not as high as some of the other teams they're going to have to beat later on.
All right, Steve.
Is Louisville not going to face any suspensions or any punishments or anything for all the crap that went on there?
Well, we're going to find all that stuff out in the offseason. Once all the actual information from the FBI investigation came out over the summer, kind of leading into early fall, probably about before the season started, so he kind of came out and said, we understand all this, we're investigating, but we're not going to until after the season's over. So everyone kind of.
We're going to let them play in the tournament. We're going to let them play in the tournament this year.
Yeah, they wanted to protect their moneymaker before they really got into any of that.
All right, well, that's fair.
So, what's your opinion? Should Louisville be or have harsher sanctions against them, Steve?
Well, you're innocent until you're proven guilty, and nobody's proven them guilty yet of anything. So, yeah, they should play. I have no problem with it. Chris Mack's a great basketball coach. And, well, then you sanction them. I mean, you sanction them hard. I mean, it depends on what they end up sanctioning them on. I mean, if it's a slap on the wrist type event, some things they can't control. They can't control whether Adidas is paying the kids money for shoe contracts. I mean, I'm not naive enough to think that Pitino didn't know what the hell was going on any of the things that Louisville's been accused of doing. But right now, they're innocent. So let them play. I think they got a great basketball coach. It's a tradition-rich program. They're in a great conference. They're an asset to the NCAA tournament. I think there's a lot of people rooting for them now because they got rid of Pitino. There's a lot of, I'm kind of a Louisville fan. I like Chris Mack a lot. I want to see that team do well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so my question is this. Even if they're found guilty, they got rid of Rick Pitino. Should the school face sanctions from there?
Well, that's historically the way it happens. The coaches don't get admonished. The team, the school does. The players do. So according to the law of the land of the NCAA right now, yeah. Now, if you want to change that and say, Pitino's banned from ever coaching college basketball again,
that's what should happen,
more for that
but
than
it
punishing
won't.
Louisville.
Yeah, that's what should happen.
That's exactly right. That's what should happen. Why punish the schools? Pitino's the head coach. He knew what was going on. And he should be just said, you no longer have a license to coach in college basketball, the NCAA basketball. You're done. And any coach that pulls that crap at any school, you lose your license to coach in NCAA basketball. Go coach high school, go coach pro, go coach D3, go coach
don't send
NIA.
them to high school. Come on, high school kids don't need strippers.
Well, I mean, I was just looking for other avenues. Go coach in China. China's an emerging basketball market.
Yeah,
send him to China. Coaching in Europe or something?
Yeah.
Isn't Pitino over coaching in Europe somewhere?
Yeah, he's in Greece.
In Greece, coaching over there. Leave him over there. Fine. He's, we're not hearing about him.
Greece
So
is
it makes me sick that the school's going to get punished for this when it's Pitino that pulled the trigger on everything.
Yeah.
I am very interested to see how the NCAA does about punishing these schools, because you can single out a school like Louisville because they just had the whole stripper scandal and vacate that title leading into this. So you can see them as a defender. But if you go after Louisville for these allegations specifically, are they going to punish Kansas with the same vigor? Are they going to go after Miami as well, and Maryland, who was into this? Are they going to kind of go after everybody, schools, or are they just going to kind of let it all go by the wayside and say everybody was doing this?
Well,
here's a slap on the wrist.
There needs to be a double-edged sword here in this one, in that you can't you let a guy like a Rick. This is hypothetical. This is all hypothetical at this point. But you let a guy like Rick Pitino trash Louisville, which is a stellar basketball program, tradition-rich, multiple-time NCAA champion, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, he possibly could be coaching UCLA next month. Now we know that's not going to happen, but hypothetically, he could just go, and then he just goes over there. Mm-hmm. He walks away scot-free, goes to another great program, gets no slap on the wrist whatsoever, makes another $10 million salary. And then Louisville is left picking up the bricks and pieces and trying to rebuild themselves. I know it's got to be. We punish the coach, and we punish the program. But like I said, the coach needs to be banned for a period of time. It's like 5 years, so whatever they arbitrarily think. Get Condoleezza Rice and her commission on it. They know nothing. They'll come up with some stupid answer.
Something else, the last thing I'll say regarding this, I'm interested to see, is that the FBI investigation, the charges they brought against all the assistant coaches, was essentially that they were intending to defraud the universities and the programs. So if
NCAA slipped that on the table pretty good, didn't they? Yeah.
Well, it gave the NCAA an avenue to just punish the coaches, as you're saying, and say that they wronged the university, and therefore they don't necessarily have to punish the university or the program if they choose to go that route instead. I think that's how widespread it is. It gives them that option.
We need to do a bracketology on all the federal judges and the federal prosecutors and get a bracketology of them and see where they're all sitting at the NCAA tournament games this year. I'll goddamn guarantee you most of them aren't anywhere far away from mid-court.
Man, I'll tell you what. This is the only thing about you being coached by Bobby Knight is you're always using the Lord's name in vain, and I don't like it. But
I know. I apologize.
It's very disrespectful to me and the listeners.
My apologies.
Okay.
Dadgummit.
Your apology,
dadgummit from here on out.
It makes you sound stupid, Steve. It makes you sound like your vocabulary is not big enough to have a word outside of that. Don't you think, Brian?
Sure.
Brian totally agrees with me.
I agree. I agree with you too. My apologies. It was a frustrated slip of the tongue because
we're just getting passionate. We're just getting passionate, and sometimes
getting passionate.
We're getting passionate.
All right.
It was wrong.
Next up, let's go to the Big East. Jay Wright.
Matter of fact, I'm just going to ban myself from the show for the rest of the week.
Just ban yourself for the next 10 seconds so I get the next question out, okay? The Big East, Jay Wright, Villanova's now won 6 games in a row, and I think this is why Jay Wright's one of the best coaches in the country. He's taken a team, and he's got these pieces that weren't working earlier. They get beat by Furman. They got manhandled by Michigan. And now he's got a team here that looks like they're going to be in the tournament and may be able to win a few games.
Yeah, the win a few games part I'm still not sure about, but the way they've turned around is a definite testament to coaching abilities. I will take this recent winning streak they're on with a slight grain of salt because pretty much all of those wins have come at home against such a competition, which is something that they're taking care of business, which not every team in the Big East has done to this point, especially St. John's, which is I helped Villanova out in their standing, and they're certainly playing much, much better. I don't want to get that confused. But I'm interested to see how they'll play in games like that when they go play Butler tonight, Indianapolis, how they perform there, and if that same improvement travels and they're able to beat a team they should beat like Butler, and when they start getting to some of those road games and playing more of the Marquettes of the world in the Big East, how they perform in those games, for me to say that they're all the way back to being the favorite in the conference.
Yeah, and I think from St. John's great start, we've seen that was more the product of a really weak schedule.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, because they lose to DePaul, they've lost at Villanova, they've lost at Butler. And this Butler team, I think, is a team that, when it's all said and done, is going to be one of the top 3 teams in the Big East and have a shot to make the tournament and win a game or two.
I think the top 2 is definitely Villanova, Marquette. You can switch those 2 however you want. I would still probably favor Marquette. But there is a kind of a hectic race to get that 3rd spot in Butler, especially if they can beat Villanova tonight. May have an inside track on that.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt right now Marquette's the best team in the Big East. And I think Marquette, with those 2 studs shooting the ball, you never know when they're going to get hot. They're a definite threat to at least be a Sweet 16 team.
Oh, yeah.
Steve, would you like to ask a question?
Golly gee whizzes, Mike. No, I wouldn't.
Why not?
I don't have a question to ask right now.
Don't you like
I agree.
Brian? All right.
No, I love Brian.
Okay. Big 12, Kansas wins a game over Iowa State that they probably shouldn't have won, but it's at Allen Fieldhouse where they're hard to beat anyways. Kansas still the best team in the Big 12, I assume, Brian, but I question whether this is a team that could actually make a Final Four run.
Yeah, I wrote a couple weeks ago that I thought Kansas was the 3rd best team in the Big 12, and I still think they're about that. I would still think Texas Tech is better than them. Just on a neutral court, I would even go with Iowa State potentially being better than them on a neutral court. But when I said that, I was not ready to say that somebody else was going to win the Big 12, that somebody else, or that Kansas would finish 3rd in the Big 12, because playing at Allen Fieldhouse is such an advantage, and the Big 12 is such a gauntlet that gives them a huge advantage of everybody else every year. And they always win the games like they did last night against Iowa State, where they don't play well and Iowa State outplays them for 35 minutes, but that 5 minutes is when Kansas goes on a 12-0, 15-0 run and changes the game, and they win.
Yeah, and
so
I think there's no doubt Texas. I think Texas Tech's the best team in that, and I think they're the team most capable of making a Final Four run by the way they play defense.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think they'll get to the Final Four personally.
I don't either. I just think they
the
could.
Big 12 is going to. Yeah, and if the team from the Big 12 is going to, I think that's expected.
Oh, what, Steve? Steve's going to make a smart-ass comment after he sat over there and took a nap for the last 5 minutes.
I banished myself for my
home care nurse wake you
banished myself. I told you I put myself on suspension.
Okay, well, go ahead.
For a period of time.
What do you have to say?
There's no team in the Big 12 who's going to make the Final Four.
Yeah.
No.
Well, nobody here said
there's
there
not.
was.
I mean,
my actual
you're talking
comment,
about Texas Tech making a run to the Final Four. There's no team
they
in the
could
Big
make
12
a run to the Final Four.
this
It's
year.
absolutely asinine to say that they can't.
Well,
What are they lacking?
I
Number one,
said there's no team that will.
Okay. Well, you know what? Last year, you didn't pick Loyola to go to the Final Four either, did you?
No, I didn't pick Loyola to go to the Final Four,
No,
Mike.
you didn't.
You're
But
right.
You're
the genius.
You picked Michigan to beat Villanova. So
Yes, I did.
what the hell?
I missed that one too. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm human. I'm like a referee in the NFL. I make mistakes. I miss calls.
Oh, well then you
might
would
be,
referee.
might be
in
in line
the
for a pay raise if you're an NFL with that track record.
Yeah.
But all right, whatever. Pac-12.
The hard part here is you look at all these conferences and you keep talking about the SEC, the Big 12, the ACC, the Big 10, the Pac-12. I mean, what you can't gauge is the relative comparison of each conference to each conference. I still think ACC is clearly the dominant conference in college basketball.
Yeah.
Top to bottom, they have the best teams, bar none. Then I think the Big Ten probably would be second.
Really? Because
second.
you just said
Because
10 minutes ago on this show the SEC was better.
It's better. It's more competitive. It's more balanced. Like I said, I also said if you listen to the entire statement I made, I said they're cream of the crap.
Whatever.
You remember using that phrase?
Well, you know what? You used that
They're just
phrase
a very
about every
balanced
10
conference. It
minutes
looks like
since
they're
I've
beating the
known
crap
you.
out of each
So,
other.
yeah. I always
Am I allowed to
remember
use
you
the word
using
crap?
it. Well, all you do is use constantly the same phrases anyways. At least you haven't used the rising
Fine,
tide
yeah.
raises all buoys in a while.
I'm getting to that one. It's because it's not happening in the Big Ten, that's for sure. The Big Ten is quickly becoming the Big Two.
Yeah, and the question there is this. I think most people thought Michigan was better in the Big Two for a while. Has Michigan State assumed that role now, Brian?
You could certainly argue for it. I do think Michigan State will end up winning the regular season title. I think the way they're playing, even without Joshua Langford right now, only tells you how good they're going to be when Langford does get back pretty soon, that they can go to even another level. And I think because of that, they're going to avoid more of the types of losses like Michigan had at Wisconsin. I think Michigan State is going to avoid more of those. I still think Michigan State are two fairly even teams. I think they'll split their games when they play the last 2 weeks of the season, and then both their games the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, which will be a lot of fun. But I think they'll split those two. But I do think Michigan State is more equipped to avoid those sort of pitfall losses on the road than Michigan is.
All right, so what's your take on Indiana right now?
They're a train wreck, and they need to go to Rutgers or figure something out where they can just get a win under the belt and kind of get positive momentum going in and get things on the right track. They're in a downward spiral right now, and it seems like everything is building off of itself in that regard. They've become so reliant on Romeo Langford and Morgan to kind of do everything that if one has a bad game or if the opponent is going to take one or limit one, make them inefficient one way or another, the supporting cast has been unable to pick them up and keep them playing at a high level.
Yeah, and
Brian, I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
Let me ask.
Nice to see you have a question.
Yeah, I do. I have several questions, Mike. Just pick the right time to ask.
All right.
Let's look at Archie Miller. Now, I like Archie Miller. I think he's going to be good for Indiana in the long run. Is he in a pretty steep learning curve right now, too, going from what really we call a Dayton, a mid-major, to going to the Big Ten, which is a major, in Indiana, which is still, according to Wall Street Journal, one of the top 5 most valued programs in the country. Is he pretty well part of the problem just because he's a bad coach, just because he's just in an incredibly steep learning curve of how to coach these games and coach against these teams and how to coach on the road in the Big Ten and things like that? Is that part of the problem of Indiana right now?
I don't think he's part of the problem. I do think he has a learning curve, and he's still kind of learning that, kind of how to play consistently against this level of competition and what it takes to win on a nightly basis in a conference like the Big Ten. He's really good. I still think the bigger problem is the youth that they're relying on in some positions, and then the lack of talent of some of their upperclassmen. They don't have the skilled depth right now that you need really to be consistent in the Big Ten and avoid the bad games that you may get from your stars on any given night. I think we're seeing some of the pitfalls in the roster that he'll make better because he's an excellent recruiter, and as some of his guys become older, we'll see the program really become where Indiana fans want it to be. But there's definitely we're still in a transition phase with Indiana. I think we're on the back end of it, and it's, the year after, we're going to see them be really solid and consistent. I think that timeline got sped up in the minds of a lot of fans with how good Morgan played last year, and of course with Langford incoming. But I would still preach patience for Indiana fans for another year or two with Archie.
All right, follow-up question here. If Indiana goes to Northwestern tonight, they only beat Northwestern by 2 points in Bloomington earlier in the year. Mm-hmm. They come up there and lose. Right now I'm looking at like ESPN's bracketology. They got them as a 9 seed. They become a bubble team real quick if they lose this game tonight.
Yeah.
And I don't want to dwell on Indiana because we have an Indiana show that, we have a great team to talk about. No. Indiana's not a great team right now.
I think they'd be on the right side of the bubble, but I think they would be in that bubble conversation. Ohio State and their team that started off really hot and is now finds themselves in the bubble conversation as well with some bad losses that they've had. So a loss to Northwestern would put them in the conversation. I would still think that they'd be on the right side of that conversation. But I know Indiana fans want to avoid having that altogether. So
Indiana's put themselves in They put themselves in a position now where they no longer have a margin of error. They basically there's games you budgeted to lose. I'm sure they budgeted to lose at Michigan State. I mean, you got to be realistic about what you're doing here. You got to say it's not likely that this Indiana basketball team is going to go to Michigan State and win in East Lansing. Not likely. So there's games they budgeted to lose in their overall scheme of things, I'm sure. And I don't want to say that they're planning on losing, but the coaches got to be realistic about what their pathway is to get into the tournament. But they can no longer lose a game that they didn't budget to lose, like a Northwestern or Rutgers. And Rutgers just beat somebody last week.
They beat Ohio State, I think, on
beat
Friday
Ohio
night
State
a couple weeks ago.
Northwestern's
also
beat Nebraska.
Yeah, Northwestern's not a bad basketball team at all. I mean, Indiana could very easily lose this game tonight. But anyway, I don't want to dwell on Indiana because we have an Indiana show, and that's not really a prominent team. Talk to me a little bit about your take on the Duke-Virginia game. I watched that game. I thought Duke manhandled Virginia pretty well.
I think there was a very obvious advantage for Duke in terms of size and athleticism. We saw just
they didn't have their star player.
Yeah, we saw the sheer talent of Duke and guys like R.J. Barrett and Zion Williamson, and we saw Virginia's methodical style have problems handling that. I think Virginia doesn't get as much credit as they probably should for the way they played in that game. They shot the ball horribly. Some of that was Duke's defense and them having to shoot over more length than they were used to. But a lot of that was them just missing open shots and shots they normally make. Obviously, if Duke had Trey Jones, it may have been a different story. But one thing that I thought was interesting as I was watching the game, not having Trey Jones gave Duke, I think, an even bigger advantage when it came to the size and length of their lineups because they were playing R.J. Barrett at point guard. So they essentially had four guys, with the exception of Marcus Golden playing center at 6'10", who were around 6'7", 6'8", and they were able to switch everything. And Tony Bennett made a comment at halftime that they were the first team that Virginia had faced that year that was really able to switch everything and kind of disrupt their offensive flow by switching everything. And not every team is able to do that because not every team has the athletes that Duke does. But we saw the kind of problems that Duke can give some of the really good teams in the country simply because of how big and athletic they are.
Did you see a separation between Duke and Virginia? I mean, I kind of saw separation in the two teams.
This was a 72-70 game at Duke, right?
Yeah, but
I thought I missed something.
I'm just on controlling the tempo of the game, controlling the way the game was played. Like I said, forcing Virginia to take shots they don't normally take or making them shoot all through the shots, things of that nature. I saw a little separation. Did you see that, Brian, or was that just me because I like Duke better than Virginia because of Kyle Guy?
I think we'll find out. I think they play in Charlottesville on February 9th against the return game at Virginia. I think we'll find out then because as well as it looked like Duke played from that test, and as poorly as it seemed like Virginia played, it seemed like they were scrambling. It was still a 2-point game, and obviously Duke didn't have Trey Jones,
Sure.
which will play a
Duke's
factor.
missing their best player
But-
too. Yeah, they're missing their best player.
But Virginia more than held their own in one of the toughest environments in the country. And so Virginia can win that game in Charlottesville, which I think they will. I think we'll see how real that gap is. I still think Duke is a better team and would win on a neutral court, but I think that gap is very, very small. I'm thinking that'll show in February, but I'm interested to see that game if Virginia shows that or not.
Intriguing matchup, Duke and Tennessee. Would that be an intriguing matchup right now?
It would be. Duke's the most talented team in the country, so they're going to have talent advantages everywhere. But Tennessee is one of the few other teams that have the size and athleticism to be able to match up.
They're also one of the older teams in the
wings.
country, aren't they?
They are.
Tennessee?
Yeah. So that experience and having the same kind of guys who are all in that 6'7", 6'8" range. Grant Williams and Admiral Schofield are probably two of the only players in the country, maybe the only two players in the country, that have the kind of body types to be able to handle Zion as much as you could. So that would be a fun matchup. I would still give the edge to Duke, obviously, but that would be very intriguing.
I watched a little bit of Tennessee play. That's a solid basketball team. They're good.
Mm-hmm.
They're very, very, very good. It would be a really fun game to watch. It'd be very physical.
When I first brought up Tennessee as one of the best teams in the country, Brian, do you remember a certain person who gave me a bunch of crap about it?
You might have to remind me. I'm not quite sure.
I'm pretty sure Steve Risley did. He called me stupid because Tennessee wouldn't have a chance to go to the Final Four. No, it doesn't sound like Steve. Quit being such an ass kisser, Brian. So, Steve, I guess you were wrong, huh?
Well, wrong again, but I correct myself when I'm wrong. So I think I looked at Tennessee, watched them play, compared them up, watched Duke and Virginia play. I looked at those teams this weekend and said, okay, I think probably the two strongest teams in the country right now are Duke and Tennessee.
Oh, I think the three strongest are Duke, Virginia, and Tennessee in no particular order because the one thing that I like about Tennessee is they've got guys. This is almost the same team that was there last year, wasn't it, Brian, that went to the Sweet 16?
Yeah.
And when you look at that, it makes me, I'm going to use an old-time word, harken back to that Wisconsin team that beat Kentucky in the Final Four when UK was undefeated, and the difference was the experience on that team. And that's why right now I would give Tennessee the best chance to beat Duke in a neutral site NCAA tournament game. I don't think they will, but I would give them a shot just because of that veteran leadership.
One thing
I wouldn't argue that with you, Mike.
One thing I'm interested to see with Tennessee, I guess there are two things. First of all, really the only big win they have this year is that neutral court win over Gonzaga that they had back in December. I think it was in Phoenix. And they're getting pretty much everything off of that. They haven't played really any great teams since then. And obviously they've taken care of business and put up huge margins for victories against some of these lesser teams. But they haven't proved themselves, I would say, on a consistent basis. And looking at their schedule, their SEC schedule is really backward. They play kind of most of the bottom half teams in the conference the first half of the season. And then as we get into February and early March, that's when they play pretty much all their games against the Mississippi States, the Ole Misses, the Kentuckys, the LSUs, the Auburns. That's when all their games are. So Tennessee certainly looks really good right now, but I would reserve judgment on just how good they are until we see them get through that stretch.
Yeah, you also have a win over Louisville, and they lost a close game to Kansas. That's about the only games that really stick out to me.
But with those, Louisville win was very early on in the year, and that Louisville team was much different than this Louisville team that Chris Mack currently has. They were still trying to find themselves. And Kansas, we don't know how good. I mean, Kansas is a very good team, but we don't know how good they are really in terms of where they stand in that top 25. I still think they're more of a middling team in that 15 to 12 range more than they are an actual top 10 team. But that's still a a good performance for Tennessee. The only
Brian,
thing
I got a question for you.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, finish your statement. Finish your statement, then I'll have a question for you. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. Tennessee, to see when they get into that stretch in the end of February, early March, is how they in close games when they're tested. In the NCAA tournament last year, they lost. They were the team that lost to Loyola. I believe that was in the round of 32 was when they lost to Loyola Chicago, because Loyola beat Miami. And
really?
in that close game, Tennessee you could see them kind of bickering at each other and didn't necessarily fall apart late, but didn't play up to the level that they had played that for the rest of the game, and Loyola out-executed them and got that win. Against Alabama over the weekend, it was the same kind of thing, where Tennessee made the plays they needed to down the stretch. Grant Williams made his free throws. Admiral Schofield came up big last couple possessions. But in that second half, when Alabama got hot and really started testing Tennessee, making that game close, Tennessee kind of shut down a little bit. And eventually Grant Williams and Admiral Schofield kind of rallied them, but they kind of shut down a little bit. So when they get into those stretches where they're going to play a lot of good teams, you can see that consistently. I'm interested to see how they respond in those situations.
Okay. Question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about Gonzaga. Are they just kind of staying under the radar screen? I mean, this team is creeping up the rankings again. They're up to number 4 on both polls. They're kind of being very quiet. We've not talked about them on this entire show in the first 40 minutes of this show. Pugh is arguably one of the best college basketball coaches that's out there right now. They've got a good mix of talent in terms of older and younger players. They've been there and done that before. Are we is everybody in the world kind of quietly overlooking Gonzaga right now? Are they poised to do something this year?
They have the talent to. The thing that concerns me, this is the same thing that happens to Gonzaga every year, is because they play well in the non-conference. They have a good win. This year they have a pretty good wins. And then they get into conference play and they rack up a whole bunch of wins against teams that are nowhere near the same talent level as them playing the West Coast Conference. So because they will have won so many games in a row, and because we saw them, in this case, beat Duke in Maui, we start thinking that they might be the best team in the country, one of the best teams in the country, and they certainly have the talent to be. But I circle back to what we talked about kind of the end of non-conference when they lost to UNC and lost to Tennessee, struggled with Washington. Outside of what they did in Maui, we're really outside of that Duke game, because they struggled with Illinois in Maui and struggled with Arizona in Maui.
Yeah.
Outside of that Duke game, Gonzaga has looked like a good team, but they didn't look like the number 4 team in the country. Now they are totally healthy now. They have Killian Tilly back. They have Gino Crandall back, who's their backup point guard. They have a full complement of players. But this happens every year where people kind of forget what they show in non-conference because of the amount of wins that they stack up playing against lesser teams in the West Coast Conference.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that's, 2 losses are against, the number 1 ranked team in the country, and UNC, which is all of a sudden starting to light it up again. They're riding a 9-game winning streak right now. And I'm looking at their schedule right now. They're 9-game. They're hot, but they just seem for some reason to be staying under the radar screen. And I like any team whose colors are red, white, and blue. So
you always hated
there
it.
You go.
Kind of
and again, I'm not.
No, actually, I bought a pink sweatshirt yesterday, Mike. Believe it or not.
But that's just recently. Before that, you hated them, so don't give me that stuff.
Well, because they beat Peyton Manning. That's all. I'm over that now.
They own Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning's you brainwashed me to believe Peyton Manning sucks. So I bought that now.
There you go.
So there you go. So you just changed me on that, but yeah, I like Gonzaga a lot. Just kind of lurking around there. I mean, they could potentially be a number 1 seed. They keep going like they're going.
Oh yeah. And I wasn't trying to say that Gonzaga was bad and not a good team.
No, I know you weren't. You weren't. No, because none of us are talking about them a lot. Nobody's talking about Gonzaga a lot.
You don't talk about them a lot because the conference is not a great conference. San Francisco's a good team, but you don't talk about them from January until the tournament starts because you know what it's going to be. They're going to run through the tournament. And the thing is this, if they were good enough to beat Duke at the start of the season, they'll still be able to play with them and possibly beat them when you get to the tournament because Mark Few is only going to make that team better as it goes anyways.
Right.
Yep.
As they get healthy, and they, because they're in such a little bit of a weaker conference, they're probably not going to get the crap beat out of them as much as, say, a Big Ten team is, or an ACC team, or an SEC team is, or a Big 12 team. Those guys, they pound on each other. I mean, the Big Ten's a war every night. ACC is a sprint race every night. SEC is a war every night. So they're going to kind of glide through their conference and probably not have to expend themselves to a great extent. That could be good or bad. I think it's not a problem when you have a Mark Few coaching the team. But they're probably going to skate through that without a lot of stress on them to do it. Which puts them in a greater state of mind, I think, going into the tournament, knowing you got Mark Few as your coach. And you've been there, the last several years doing it. So I like Gonzaga a lot.
All right,
I think they're an underrated team.
All right, Brian, what are your 2 or 3 games over the next week you think people should watch out for that are the most intriguing games to you?
Well, the one tonight that's really intriguing to me for sure is that Villanova-Butler game.
Yeah.
Because we'll find out if Villanova is able to carry their kind of weight on the road and keep this against a solid opponent in a place that traditionally struggled the last couple of years.
You there, Brian? I think.
Well, we find Brian. I tend to agree with him. I think Villanova carries this game tonight. I think Villanova's starting to peak a little bit here.
Butler beats them.
Do you think so?
Butler beats them. It's
Do you
at
think
Hinkle. So? Hinkle is the greatest basketball, mecca in the world. And I think Butler beats them. They beat St. John's by 9 the other day. I think they're going to beat them here, too. So, all right. Looks like we lost Brian.
Go ahead. You want to try and dial him back real quick?
I think we were about done anyways.
Okay, see if you can get him back, close out.
I would.
Don't leave him hanging.
Hold on there. He was having some.
See if you can get him back.
We'll keep talking while I try to get him back.
No, the only reason I think Villanova, I just think Wright starts, doing what Tom Izzo does.
Reach the voicemail box of 91927055613.
I think he's having issues with his phone.
Okay, the East Coast, the ACC team, the East Coast out there, they're getting hit with storms again. The only reason I give Villanova the nod a little bit is just Jay Wright over Butler's coach. But I don't know what the talent level is. And you're right, they are playing at Hinkle. This is a monster game for Butler, obviously, because right now Butler's projected as a play-in team in that Dayton fiasco they do every year.
It's not a fiasco. I get to go to that every year. I sit courtside in like the second row, and they give me really cold Sprite and really good chili. So don't knock it. I love the Dayton.
All right, no, I'm not. You're right. I apologize. I'm sorry, but right now Butler's projected into that bracketology of going to the playing games, and so this is a big. This game is as important to Butler as Northwestern Indiana is to IU, in terms of solidifying any continued hope of dancing in March right now. So,
right.
the intriguing question to me right now is Michigan or Michigan State best in the Big Ten, and I like Beeline a lot, but I've got to give the nod to Izzo. I watched Michigan play Indiana, and I go back saying again, I thought Indiana really had a legitimate chance to win that game at
there, Brian?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what that was.
So give us the real quick. You had that game. Is there any other game you want to bring up? Steve can't hear us because we can't take calls. It says we took it. Steve's talking to himself and doesn't even know it right now. So real quick, do you have another game we need to look forward to?
Those two. I think the Kentucky-Kansas game this weekend is going to be very interesting. And then Duke Pitt tonight. I'm kind of circling. Pitt's been a tough team to play at home. They beat Louisville at Pitt, beat Florida State at Pitt. Duke coming off the week win over Virginia, and Jeff Capel, who's Pitt's head coach now, obviously being a former member of Coach K's staff at Duke for a long period of time. That's going to be an interesting game to watch for me tonight. I think that'll be, I don't necessarily think Pitt will win, but I think it'll be uncomfortably close for a lot of people.
All right, Brian, do you want to tell people where they can find you on Twitter and everywhere else on the internet?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at brauf33. It's BRAUF33. And you can see all my work up on bustingbrackets.com.
All right, Brian, we want to thank you once again for coming on the show. We love having you every Tuesday, and I guess you'll be back next Tuesday, correct?
Always. Look forward to it.
All right, thanks a lot, Brian. Guys, we are going to take a commercial break, and then we'll be back with Bobby Sheridan from the Sheridan Report. We'll be back right after this.
Tune in to Game Day IQ for the smartest hour in sports. Test your knowledge of sports trivia on everything from football, basketball, and baseball to cricket, tennis, and hockey to horse racing, auto racing, and soccer, and, of course, the Olympics. Every week, you'll learn tantalizing details of sports' most intriguing conundrums that you can stump your friends with.
Find out what sports figure needs a remedial trip to Coach Buck's bench. Settle in for story time with Uncle Bucky. See if this is the week that I go off on a Category 5 level rant. Learn whose performance on or off the playing surface deserves a special place on this week's pedestal. All that plus a variety of other features that all add up to the most cerebral hour in sports this week. Oh, and you'll have fun too. So raise your Game Day IQ by joining me, host Chris Cook and
Alan Buck, for an informative look at this week in sports right here at thegruelingtruth.net.
All right, guys, we're back on thegruelingtruth.net. We have some studio issues. We got Brian to wrap up his segment, but it dropped Steve.
Oh, wait a minute. Did everything I just say not get recorded?
I don't know what you said, so I couldn't tell you if it did or it didn't.
I was talking on my own as a genius.
Yeah, I know. We got a little laugh out of that, to tell you the truth.
Did you hear it?
No, we didn't hear it. But we knew you were
still
talking.
You lost everything that I just said. So everything that the last 5 minutes, everything that I went on my own with YouTube boneheads falling off the phone lines, all the bold statements I just made, the great observations, didn't get recorded.
No, they didn't.
That's a shame.
I know. I'm sure you said some awesome stuff.
Wow. That was awesome.
Bobby,
I broke down every conference on my own opinion.
Bobby, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Guys, once again, it's Tuesday, which means, well, at the end of every show, we have Bobby Sheridan to come in and talk to us about the Lions, do a little sports history. Bobby, how you doing today?
Well, I'm doing good. I sure wish Boston would have won by 9 and not 8. That was a crazy fourth quarter. Almost predicted, but
that's a push, though, isn't it? So you didn't lose.
Yeah, it's a push. You can't take it one way and then not take the. 7.5 was on the sheet, and I did personally get 7.5 for a little bit of money on the overnight line. But when I made my bet in the morning, it was 8 already, and so there could have even been some 8.5. So it was officially a push, and they had a 19-point lead going into the fourth. So it was a disappointing push, let me tell you.
So what is the point spread right now for the Super Bowl? Has it changed since yesterday?
Yes, it has. The point spread everywhere is 2.5 now. And I got some information. They said that 96% of the money has been on the Patriots so far, and 76% of all tickets written over the counter. So it's just been a lot of money on New England early, and when it gets to 3, which it will, you'll get the buyback on the Rams, and it'll probably sell 2.5.
The thing that stands out to me is this, though. The Rams are a team that is perfectly made to beat the Patriots with their defense because they got the big push. They can get up the middle. They're good in coverage. I think this game is a complete toss-up, and actually, if it wasn't for the Brady Belichick factor, I would pick the Rams.
Well, I mean, that's what everyone's having to decide on. And I think, all that early money came in. Just New England bettors under a field goal are just going to go with it. And why would you take the Rams? You just wait till 3 and then take them. And that's when we'll get our two-way action. It's going to be a lot of build-up. Thursday is the release of the prop bets, and a lot of people like to bet the props.
Oh, yeah, we definitely got to talk about the prop bets because a lot of those are crazy anyways.
Yeah, I'll get a list of all those, and we can go over a few of those for some fun stuff for fans.
All right. What's your big play for tonight, basketball-wise?
Basketball, we're going to jump to college. The defending champs are coming to Butler. And, in this spot, you see Butler as a favorite. It jumps out at you a little bit. And when you do some research, non-ranked teams favored over ranked teams is a 62% play. And this goes back a lot, years. And Butler is favored by 1.5, and that was the overnight line, and that is the current line. So let's look a little deeper. We know we're going to want to be on Butler with that type of percent in our favor. So let's see if we can. And we can. Villanova was undefeated in the conference, just won by 10 Friday over Xavier, and a nice win for them.
Whoa. What's the Xavier stuff?
Well, Villanova just defeated Xavier.
No, they beat Xavier. It's not Xavier. People in Cincinnati get really pissed when you call them Xavier. I mean, how many times do they have to go to the Elite Eight to get called the correct name? That pisses me off, Bobby.
I will remember that. It's a Z, Xavier. Not an X, right? A Z.
Xavier.
Okay. All right, well, anyhow, Villanova come off that win in Philadelphia, and now has to travel to Butler to play this game on a Tuesday. It's going to give them one less day of preparation as a team, and that's going to come into play here in a second. Butler, meanwhile, played probably their best game of the year at home. They beat St. John's by 9.
Yeah, and the game wasn't that close.
In a game that they they really feel good about, and that Indiana day that you guys had there, they packed the place in bad weather, and they played a great game, and they got great production off their bench. And these are things that Villanova is not getting. They're relying on two players mainly. They're getting 40 minutes a game from senior forward Pascal and senior guard Booth, and they've even rested them in practice during the week. This is all information I got reading on the game. And so, lack of depth on one short day of prep. And Coach Wright even said that they have to play big in this game. And he said that's not something that they've done real well and that they're learning to do. So, it looks like a good spot for Butler. They've adopted the 1-0 mantra of the Colts. And I think we can go with them tonight. I think they're a good play, a solid play, just a solid handicapping play. So we'll go with Butler minus 1.5.
Yeah, I hate to jinx you, but I totally agree. But Risley liked Villanova earlier on the show.
Well,
Risley, you there?
Yeah.
Oh,
I can't comment much because I didn't get emailed my Sharon report rap sheet for the day, so I'm kind of flying in the dark.
No.
I didn't get copied on that today, so I'm on suspension because I used a profanity early in the show. So
yeah, he used the Lord's name in vain, and I had to admonish him again, and it's like the 5th time, and I'm like, Steve, come on. But you know what? It's my fault. Because when you let the horse drink out of the toilet for 7 months, it's hard to just tell him to stop.
Well, it is. You have to be taught. And, hey,
come on, Steve, that was funny. That was what you always say.
No, don't let a dog drink out of your toilet for 29 years and then put the lid down. Dog don't get it. You know what? Horses don't drink out of toilets. They drink out of watering troughs.
But I was trying to do a little play on words and make it funnier. I guess it didn't work. Go ahead, Bobby.
It didn't work.
But, if you do let the horse drink out of the toilet for 20-some years, he'll still drink out of the toilet.
Hey, Mike, if you've got a horse in your trailer, you've got bigger issues than it drinking out of your toilet.
You know what? I've got a horse in my trailer. That's why my wife married me. Go ahead, Bobby. Now, that right
Steve,
there was funny. But go ahead, Bobby.
It was funny. Steve, I got 2 things to say.
Shut up, Bobby.
I got two things to say. I did send you the email.
Bobby, you kiss ass too much here. You got to learn to be a man on this thing.
You're just mad because Bobby usually kisses your ass and not mine.
I know. Now he's kissing your ass.
I know.
Jesus Christ.
Bobby
Sheridan.
understands the pecking order now.
Where's my share? Email me my Sheridan report right now so I can get in this conversation.
I will, and I did email it to
right
you
now.
yesterday.
I'm on email right now. I'm not seeing it.
All right, let me do it. But secondly, before I do that, I wanted to tell you, Villanova's lost the last 2 trips to Butler with better teams than this year's team. This is a tough spot, Steve. Villanova's a terrible bet tonight. Butler's
it's not they're a terrible bet because Butler is one of the toughest places to play. I mean, Hinkle Fieldhouse is the mecca of basketball. Steve will tell you, Steve played there. Steve got upset in one of the greatest upsets in Indiana high school history when he lost to a school that had like 3 kids in it.
I got upset one game, and we won 2 sectionals, a regional. You know, I think in that gym I was everything in one. Okay, I never lost a sectional game in there. Never lost a regional game. Well, yeah, I never lost a regional game in there either, and we lost a semi-state game. And that was it. Other than that, I'm everything in one in Hinkle Fieldhouse. So, Mike, you're going off the wrong track again. I've got one loss in Hinkle Fieldhouse.
Because this is the thing. The biggest game you played at Hinkle Fieldhouse, you lost. You're a typical Colts fan. Peyton Manning's the greatest thing that ever lived, but Peyton Manning had a hard time getting the job
I debunked that earlier today, too. I told you brainwashed me into believing he's
not.
Not. So,
and I'm going to brainwash you into thinking you were a complete failure your whole life before we're done.
All right, that's good.
I'm just.
I don't know,
kidding.
Bobby. I if I was betting, I certainly would bet Butler because I trust your odds, your judgment, and like that. But I just think this is probably a situation where Jay Wright's got to coach more than he's had to in the past because he has a little less talent. And the more Jay Wright coaches, the better Villanova gets. So he's not somebody who's going to wreck a team by overcoaching them. He's only going to make them better. So we'll see. I mean, it's going to be a good game. It's on at 4 o'clock here. I think it's a 7 o'clock game, and your guys is in Indianapolis. I think it's on Fox Sports or something, isn't it? I pegged it to watch it today.
Probably Fox Sports 1.
Yeah, Fox Sports 1.
Yeah,
I think
it's going to be a great game.
It's going to be a great game. It's going to be probably the funnest game to watch on college basketball tonight.
All right,
yeah,
Bobby.
I think so. Yes, sir, Mike.
What do you want to talk about on this day?
Well, there's 2 heavyweight championship bouts that I found.
But there's
that
one
took
thing,
place
Bobby.
on
Before you get started, you're sucking up the mic again. There are other things in life that happen on these days besides boxing.
Yeah, but this is the thing, though. What you don't understand, Steve, is this. Prevailing before 1990, boxing was the biggest sport there is in the entire world. It just was.
I agree.
So when you go back in history, that's what you get.
But, we're coming up on less than 4 weeks of Daytona. I better start seeing some NASCAR crap popping up on these.
Nothing happened.
This day in history,
because this is the thing. NASCAR only happens one day out of the year, and that's when the Daytona 500 is. So until we get to, like, the February 20s or something, you don't really see anything about it. Go ahead, Bobby. Don't let this idiot bother you.
Well, I mean, this was the day Kobe scored 81 against the Raptors, but I wanted Mike to talk on the boxing because I don't know anything about that, and I want to learn. I guess maybe that's my fault, Steve. I'm being selfish a little bit because Mike's really good at boxing. And
Steve hates it when people want to learn. So.
No, go ahead. Please. I like to learn about boxing.
There were 2 heavyweight fights on this day. You had the Tyson Holmes fight, which I know Mike's got a ton of info on. He's interviewed Holmes and everything. And then the other one was the Foreman Frazier, down goes Frazier. This bout also took place on this day in 1970. I don't have it in front of me. 3, 2, 4. Anyhow.
3.
I'm good on both of them because I got to interview George Foreman also. So.
Oh, great. So I just wanted to hear just a few thoughts on those bouts.
He's name dropping again.
No, I'm friends with everybody important in the whole wide world. So, and I'll get Mike Tyson before the year's up. I can't get Joe Frazier because he's dead, and that would be a really tough get. If you talk about Foreman Frazier, the thing that's interesting about that is when I interviewed George Foreman, he said he was scared to death of Joe Frazier. He said his knees were knocking when he went in the ring. Joe Frazier had defended the lineal heavyweight title that he'd won from Ali twice against Terry Daniels, Ron Stander, two white guys, French contenders. He destroyed both of them within 5 rounds. Ali wanted to have a rematch with Frazier, but Frazier decided that Foreman would be the safer route. And Foreman was a 1968 Olympic gold medalist. He beat Ivan Chipolis to win that. And the really interesting thing about Foreman is he won that Olympic gold medal in just his 22nd or 23rd pro fight. He turns pro. He's knocking everybody out. He gets the shot at Frazier. And I think Frazier was a huge favorite in this fight. It was 5-1. Nobody thought Foreman would have a chance. But Foreman physically was just too big for Frazier. And a story that ties in with the Mike Tyson is Cus D'Amato, who was the trainer for Mike Tyson years later, always told Mike Tyson the last guy he should ever fight is a guy like George Foreman, because Foreman was so big that there was no way that Tyson could do anything with him. And it ended up, when Foreman made his comeback, Tyson was offered a ton of money on a few different occasions in the late 80s, early 90s, and both times turned it down and said, I'm not going to fight him. And that was like a 40-year-old George Foreman by then. But Foreman destroyed Frazier. He went on and lost, of course, to Ali in one of the biggest upsets in boxing history again. I think Ali was a 7-1 or 8-1 underdog. He goes on to beat Frazier. Second time, he loses to Jimmy Young in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and that's the fight that changed his life, because from talking to him, he'll tell you that after he lost the fight, he goes in and he collapses in his dressing room after a 12-round fight, and that's where he claims that he saw Jesus, and that changed his life. He became a preacher, and kind of everybody knows the story from there. He comes back and wins the title again at 45. The more interesting of the two fights to me is Mike Tyson and Larry Holmes. For my money, if this fight is fought 1978, Larry Holmes against 1988, Mike Tyson, I think Larry Holmes would have had very little problem with him. And I think Mike Tyson was a really good fighter. He was a great fighter, but he was a mental midget. Anytime he got in a fight, the thing about Mike Tyson is people put him in their top 5 in the heavyweight division because they're idiots. When you look at this, we talk about front runners with Cam Newton. Mike Tyson was a front runner. When everything was going great, he was knocking guys out. As soon as something went wrong, he would fall apart. He did it against Buster Douglas. He did it against the 5 guys he fought that put up a fight against him. The thing that was interesting about the Holmes fight that I talked to him about was in October, Holmes was offered $3 million to fight Tyson the next June because he wanted 6 to 8 months to get ready, because he'd been out of the ring for a couple of years since losing to Michael Spinks twice. And he was told that was great, that, we'll do it that way. And then in early November, Don King knocks on his door, and Don King says, hey, you're going to fight this fight in January. And Holmes is like, that's 2 months from now. I can't get ready in 2 months because he hadn't even started training yet. He's 30 pounds overweight. But the interesting thing is he was in the process of building a hotel. And it was the Larry Holmes Inn in Easton, Pennsylvania. And Don King said, all right, then, there's no fight. And Larry Holmes said, what do you mean there's no fight? He said, well, we're either doing it in January or you're not doing it. And Larry said, I needed $3 million so I could build this hotel. I was already planning to build it with that money. So he took the fight on 2 months' notice. And if you watch the fight, I think the first round shows you a lot of what it would have been like if they would have fought in their primes, because Holmes absolutely jabs his head off, wins the first round, does all right in the second round, and then by the third round, Tyson's caught up to him because Holmes just doesn't have the legs because he hadn't trained enough.
Right.
And then the thing that really proves that is, after that fight in 88, Holmes takes a couple years off. And he comes back and makes a comeback, ends up beating Ray Mercer, who was the number 1 ranked heavyweight at the time. He was undefeated. He was a military champion. He was an American gold medalist. And after the Mercer fight, he actually gets a shot at the heavyweight championship of the world against Evander Holyfield. He lost the fight probably 8 rounds to 4. But, I mean, he put up a good fight. He cut him with, I think it was an elbow, but he cuts Holyfield at the time. And then he goes through and he beats a bunch of guys that are French contenders, gets another shot against the Atomic Bull Oliver McCall for the heavyweight title, and actually loses a very close split decision. But he was real close to doing the same thing that George Foreman did. Now, the difference with him is this. Larry Holmes, at that time even, didn't get the respect he should have because he was the guy that succeeded Muhammad Ali. It's kind of like being the guy that succeeds John Wooden. No matter what you do, you're never going to get the credit. Plus, Larry Holmes was a guy that spoke the truth, said whatever he believed, whatever came out of his mouth is what he thought. And you had, after the first fight in September of 1985 against Michael Spinks, where they asked him a question because he was 48-0 going into that fight. If he'd have won, it would have made him 49-0 and tied Rocky Marciano's record for being an undefeated heavyweight champion. And when they asked him, with part of Marciano's family in there, including his son, they asked him what he thought of Rocky Marciano, and he made the comment that Rocky Marciano couldn't carry my jockstrap. So when you get that, he's a guy that continually stuck his foot in his mouth, but he's also a man, from talking to him, that he's not a bad dude. He's just somebody that if you ask him what he thinks, he will tell you. And
yeah, no filter.
Yeah, and the thing is this. Society nowadays frowns on people like that. They want everybody to be politically correct. They want them to kiss their ass. They want them to tell how great everybody is. Larry Holmes, to me, is the third greatest heavyweight that ever lived. I don't even think that's questionable. I think the top two are Joe Louis and Muhammad Ali. He's right there at number 3. And when I look at it, it's a shame he doesn't get the credit he deserves. He's starting to now as people look back, but he was a legitimate heavyweight champion of the world from June of 1978 until September of 1985. That's a 7-year run where also in that 7-year run, he showed the heart that Mike Tyson didn't show. I mean, he got hit by Ernie Shavers, who was one of the hardest punching heavyweights of all time. It looked like Shavers had killed him. He gets up, wins the rest of the round, and stops Shavers a couple rounds later. Same thing, Ronaldo Snipes in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 1981, right before he fights Jerry Cooney, which ended up being one of the biggest fights in boxing history. But he almost didn't get to fight Cooney because he gets dropped one big shot by Snipes. Same thing, he comes back and immediately dominates Snipes and stops him. And then you get the huge fight against Jerry Cooney, which, if you list the 10 biggest fights in boxing history, Holmes-Cooney has to be up there. And I know, Steve, you're not a boxing fan, but when Holmes-Cooney happened, we're talking about a fight where it wasn't just on the front of Sports Illustrated. It was on the front of Time magazine. It led to national news. Yeah.
Hey, I vaguely remember it. Yeah, I know the names and the principal players, and I vaguely remember it.
Oh, you were too drunk and stoned after that 81 championship. You were still partying in 82, right?
Yeah. Are you talking Jerry Cooney?
I don't think so.
Jerry Cooney.
Are you talking Jerry Cooney, not Quarry?
Holmes-Cooney. Jerry Quarry was in the
Holmes-Cooney.
60s, early 70s. But yeah.
Who was he or Wetmer, the Bayonne Bleeder?
The Bayonne Bleeder was Chuck Wepner, who they've now made two movies about. And if you go to thegirlytruth.net and click in the search bar, Chuck Wepner, you'll find an interview I did with him a little over a year ago. But great guy also. He's sick now.
The human punching bag.
A human punching bag.
Wepner, wasn't he?
Chuck Wepner was a tough dude. He just couldn't fight. I mean, he could fight. He couldn't box. He was a tough dude, but I mean, Chuck Wepner's the guy they based the movie Rocky off of. Even Sylvester Stallone said that. Unfortunately, Stallone didn't find it in his heart to give Wepner any money from that, which has always been kind of shady to me. But yeah, Chuck Wepner, they made a movie, Chuck, with Liv Schreiber, who's been on our show before 2 years ago. And now they just came out with another one called The Brawler about him. But I won't watch that because it looks stupid when I watch the previews. But that's all I got to say about that stuff, Bobby.
Hey, that's great stuff, and obviously you're not Googling that. That's right out of the head. So I
know.
Really need to hear when somebody has that kind of information. Just just that's their passion. You can really see that.
Well, Bobby, when you get around to put something down about NASCAR and ask me about NASCAR, I'll do the same thing on NASCAR.
But nobody cares about NASCAR.
Well, there's people that care about NASCAR.
I could do the same thing if
do.
you talk about any sport, baseball, football, or basketball, before 1990. It's just after 1990, it's all kind of a blur because I'm pretty sure I've got brain damage. But
I would believe to say I can't validate this, and I'll probably get blistered for saying this, but I would love to say that overall for the entire course of a season, NASCAR draws more people than the NFL. I'll bet they do.
What do you mean they draw more people? You mean to the event?
But more people in the stands, yeah.
They do? You do realize that every week there is like 13 to 16 NFL games that draw 60 to 80,000 people. And there is one NASCAR race that draws somewhere between 40 and 200,000, right?
Yeah, but Indianapolis draws 300 on its own.
For what?
The Brickyard 400.
No, it doesn't.
Used to.
What was the attendance at a Brickyard 400 this year?
They don't. Indianapolis for doesn't announce attendance.
Well, I know Steve could have been right maybe 6, 8, 10 years ago, but NASCAR's been on a decline for fan attendance at the events.
I agree with Lucas Weiss, who says this is asinine.
Yeah,
what you just said is asinine. That's what he said. I didn't say it. Lucas did. But I agree with Lucas because that is an asinine statement.
I prefaced it by saying I'm probably going to get blistered. But, yeah, you're right.
And this is the thing.
We'll start talking. We'll gang up on them, Steve. We'll start getting some NASCAR in.
They're going for a party.
Right.
They're going for a party. That's all they're going for. They're not going to watch the race. They're out there to get drunk, to see women pull their boobs out. That's what they're there for. It's not a sporting event. I mean, come on. When you can see maybe, a quarter to a half of the track with your ticket, give me a break, Steve. NASCAR.
That's really only Indianapolis that problem occurs. Everybody else, you can see the entire track around Daytona.
Okay.
On Daytona you can, yeah.
Yeah, but the other thing is
in Indianapolis.
What's the biggest race in NASCAR?
It's probably the Daytona 500.
Okay, but don't they have like a championship or something? And
it's in Miami, Homestead.
What sport? This would be like the NFL next year saying, hey, we're going to have the Patriots play the Saints in the Super Bowl right before the season starts, and then we're going to go ahead and play the season and have a championship at the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
so we agree. NASCAR's stupid. Anything else, Bobby?
That's it. Let's just get Butler home, and we also have a top play in the NBA, and it takes place in the Oklahoma City matchup tonight, and I think that that game is a pretty good one too. So we got 2 plays tonight on the report.
Do I dare ask you who they're playing? It's not on here.
No.
Hey, I'll tell you what.
He's not telling you the game because he wants people to go to the website, Steve, and buy the report.
Well, I can go to ESPN and Google who's Oklahoma playing tonight.
They're playing Portland. I just told you.
Incomplete information. How am I supposed to bet on
Steve has told
information?
you like 10 times. He just said, or Bobby's told you 10 times they're playing Portland, and you keep saying that's incomplete information.
All right.
That's okay.
I don't see it on the Sheridan report.
You don't need to see
NBA,
it.
OKC,
This is the thing about the Sheridan report. You don't see who Butler's playing either. He's telling you it doesn't matter. He's telling you to bet on Butler and you will win. And you will tonight because Butler's going to beat Villanova. They're going to beat them by 8 to 10 points at least.
Not going to pick against Bobby. I told you that. I learned my lesson the first day. I trust his picks. I just like to know who the hell I'm picking against. That's all.
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Risley, you asked me yesterday, I get confused between on air and then my report, the numbers and all that, but I went back 11, 4, and 1 now on air.
There you
especially
go.
With a Tsitsipas victory yesterday in the put him into the semis of the Australian Open.
Well,
and he's going to play Nadal.
Did not do that well against Nadal.
Yeah, Nadal straight sets, but that's going to be a great semifinal. Wow, I mean If you like tennis, you got to watch that one.
Are there any Canadians left in it?
Are there any what?
Canadians left in it.
Well, Lucas will chime in here in a second on that one. I don't know if there are or not.
No, I'm asking Bobby. He'll know.
Oh.
No. There's
no
not.
Canadians left. All right. So that tweet didn't
I don't believe so, no. I don't follow the girls' side, but
yeah, well,
so
nobody does.
Basically, had you been listening to our show since Bobby's been on, at 11-4-1, if you're following Bobby's picks, you probably would have made some money. And you would have been able to buy your spouse or guest or partner, mate, whatever world you live in, a nice Valentine's Day present.
no doubt about it.
All right, now
See?
little Lucas Weiss from Canada has said yes, there are Canadians left in it. Milos Raonic.
Oh, Raonic is Canadian.
Now nobody.
Oh,
knew.
wow. Okay, I forgotten that. Yeah, Raonic is in the semis today.
I'm disappointed you
Or
didn't know
trying to
that,
get to the
Bobby.
semis.
Or Steve, because Steve likes to act like he watches the Australian Open.
I only watch the girls. I want to watch the guys play tennis.
Why do you watch the girls?
I'm already been banished once for making stupid comments, so I defer.
Oh. Well, see, the reason I would rather watch the girls is you actually get to see more rallies instead of just the serve and volley crap that the men do. So that's why I would prefer to watch the women.
Well, the guys have had a lot of great rally tennis. If you've been watching, though, they really have. It's been a great tournament for that, too. A lot of long rallies, over 20 shots. So
There's
been
just
a
no
really
guy.
good-
There's no guy to get behind. I mean, there's not a McEnroe or a Lendl or a
Connors. I like Connors.
Connors
I used to
is not
watch tennis
Connors.
all the time. I used to remember
Actually,
on
Bobby,
like,
you know, Connors lives right up the street of. He lives in Santa Barbara.
why don't you get him on the show?
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Drive up to
Yeah, I
his
follow
house
him.
and knock
Him
on
and
the
his wife
door.
both, Patty McGuire. I follow them both on Twitter. They do a lot of. They're very active in animal rescue and animal help up here in Santa Barbara. They live probably 25, 30 miles north of me.
Well, why don't you get
Oh,
Jimmy for
wow.
my new Grueling Truth Tennis Legends show?
Well, I'll tweet him out and see what he says.
I love Jimmy Connors. I remember
I'm my favorite player of all time.
I
The
remember
T2000?
watching Wimbledon. I mean, from the mid-'70s through the mid-'80s. I remember 4th of July weekend. You always had the Wimbledon final, 9 o'clock in the morning. Dickenberg, Bud Collins, watching Borg play McEnroe. McEnroe play Connors. Connors play. I mean, and then you had I think 1979. You get an upset with Roscoe Tanner in the Wimbledon finals. But I think
Look out, Mountain, Tennessee.
he won I think he won at least a set. He may have pushed that 5 sets against Borg. And then I remember, I think it was in 1980, it was either 82 or 83, you had Chris Lewis from Australia, who was unranked, who actually made it all the way to the finals. And then I remember the finals I hated the most was 1984. Connors was playing McEnroe in the Wimbledon finals. And it started at 9 o'clock in the morning, and my dad was making me work because he had his own construction business, and I was pissed. I was protesting the whole time. But I worked till 1 or 2 o'clock, and I come home, and I turn on the VCR and watch the tape of the match, and the match was over in an hour because McEnroe just smoked his ass, and I hated that. But I used to love – tennis was great to watch back then because tennis is a great sport to watch anyways. The only problem is it's been dumbed down so you take so many personalities out of it that I remember watching Jimmy Connors beat Aaron Krickstein – guys like that.
That was the greatest. I was going to say that's one of the greatest matches of all time, the U.S. Open, Krickstein Connors match. Went 5 sets. It was brutal.
He ended up. I think he got to the semifinals, and he lost in the
Then Log got
semifinals
dumped the
to
next match.
Lindell or Courier.
Yeah, got
Jim
killed.
Courier.
He got killed. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Connors was
a lot
making
younger.
a run. It was like Connors was the old fart making a run, and everybody's wanting him back in the finals one more time, and and he dueled Krickstein forever. I remember watching that match. It was bloodbath.
Oh, and I
comes
used
the next
to
game.
love the U.S. Open. That was my favorite because Wimbledon,
Yeah.
if you remember in the early 80s, they'd use a white ball, and the court was so worn that it was hard to even see the ball. So it was hard to follow. But I loved the U.S. Open, And then I know CBS used to do a nightly U.S. Open wrap-up show for a half hour. This is before you could see everything. And then I know is that Labor Day? This is September or Memorial Day? It's Labor Day, right?
It's
Labor Day weekend, they would actually show tennis on this Saturday. And it used to piss me off because locally they'd have the freaking Jerry Lewis muscular dystrophy telethon thing on. Yeah. And I couldn't watch the tennis, so I would have to get my rabbit ears out. And for kids that don't know what rabbit ears are, you're not missing anything. But if you moved them just right, I could get CBS out of Dayton and actually watch the tennis that way. But, yeah, I remember watching the French Open. I remember seeing, was it Lindell coming from 2 sets down to beat McEnroe in 1984. Boris Becker in Wimbledon in 1985 when he was 17 years old, beating Kevin Curran, who was a huge server. I think he was out of California.
Stefan Edberg.
Yeah, Stefan Edberg. And then you look at the women's side. The women's side, I still claim this. Everybody always talks about Venus Williams as the greatest player ever. Martina Navratilova went an entire year and lost one match. Navratilova was the most dominant player I think we've ever seen because she just and the thing was, before she became the most dominant player ever, she had one of the greatest rivalries in sports history with Chris Evert. I remember before that, you had people like Billie Jean King, Margaret Court. But these were all personalities.
Yvonne Goolagong?
Yeah, Yvonne Goolagong ended up being Yvonne Goolagong-Colley later on after she got married.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Evert ended up marrying John Lloyd, who was a British player out of where he sucked compared to Chris Evert. But yeah, when
Chris Evert married a lot of people. Andy Mills, she married Andy Mills for a while.
She married a lot of people. Let's face it,
Greg Norman for a while.
Chris Evert was America's sweetheart, but she was a naughty girl, I think. It seemed like she got around a lot. But hey, it was the 70s. She was probably hanging out with Risley at Studio 54 with Yvonne Lindell and Boris Becker. But
Brooke Shields, who was all of 12. So.
Yeah, and Pretty Baby, and she's naked. That's a good career choice by
you guys
Mom.
are funny.
But it actually is a good career choice because it really opened up avenues for her because then she got to be naked in 15 in Blue Lagoon. And from there on, she got to wear Jordache jeans as a 17-year-old and show everybody her ass. So, hey.
Because nothing came between her and her Jordaches.
Yeah. I think a lot of things came between them myself. But all right. So, there we go. There's our tennis history lesson of today too. My son actually,
where he's filming the shows he's working on right now, the next studio over, Brooke Shields was doing a show. And he said he ran into her at the catering truck and said, all he said was she's tall. So, because my son's 6'4", and said she's like almost as tall as me.
Yeah.
So, wow.
I don't like tall women, Steve.
Short, yeah, probably not for you. I don't mind them.
I like short women.
Tall is still short for you, Steve.
That's right.
Yeah.
Everything's relevant, buddy.
Yeah. The only thing big on Steve is his ego. All right. Are we ready to wrap the show up? Anybody got anything else?
Bobby, by the end of the week, I want something on NASCAR in your picks.
There's nothing that ever happened in January in NASCAR. It's debatable whether anything interesting has ever happened in NASCAR, except for that time in the '79 Daytona where Cale Yarborough got into it with, was it Darrell Waltrip?
No, it was Cale Yarborough and Bobby Allison.
Yeah, Allison.
Donnie, one of the Allison brothers, yeah.
Hey, see, I can hang on Indy 500 history up until like 1987. That's when all the Americans stopped racing there.
Yeah, I've always said this about the fights in NASCAR. Nothing like watching two 5'4", 130-pound multimillionaires bitch slap each other with their helmets on.
Yeah, actually watching them fight.
That's about what you get in NASCAR fights.
Actually,
Jeff Gordon and Jeff Burton going at it. Both of them are about 5'4". Like, neither one of them weighs 150 pounds. They get out of their car. They don't even take their helmets off, and they're just slapping each other like two girls catfighting.
Yeah. They just start going.
They start slapping. They don't even punch each other. They just slap each other.
So you call that a sport. All right. We're going to go ahead and wrap the show up. Tomorrow, we're starting a week and a half of Super Bowl extravaganza on thegruelingtruth.net. On tomorrow's show, the first part of the show at noon, we will have Super Bowl 18 hero Jack Squarick, who intercepted the pass at the end of the first half that kind of busted the game open. On Friday, we'll have LaVon Kirkland, one of the greatest linebackers of the 1990s, who played in Super Bowl 30 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then on next Monday, we will have Don Horn, who was the backup quarterback for Bart Starr in Super Bowl II. He's going to be here to tell us stories about Super Bowl II and to talk a lot about Vince Lombardi, which I know Steve is interested in doing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's history. I'd love to, Although I'm convinced now he's not the greatest coach of all time. It's Belichick, so I've made that leap.
But then,
but still,
after that, sometime next week we'll have Mark Edwards, Super Bowl 36 stories and stories about Bill Belichick, and we got a few other people that we're trying to line up right now. So make sure you check us every day at noon Eastern time. If you
Bobby will be on every day.
Yep, Bobby's on every day. Bobby's like gonorrhea. You can't get rid of him. VD, whatever.
Wow. Golly.
What?
Man, that's bad. Man, you're in timeout now.
Well, I'm waiting for Bobby to, fight back a little bit. So Bobby needs to step
He doesn't know how to take us. Bobby. He's still afraid of us.
A little bit. That is true, a little bit.
All right. Make sure you check out Bobby's Sheridan Report. 11-4-1 since last Monday when he started with us. Make sure you go to the Sheridan Report. Find him on Twitter. Find the Grueling Truth on Twitter at Grueling Truth.
This is not good.
What?
I just got an email from LinkedIn saying 24 people are looking at my profile. Jesus Christ, leave me alone.
Oh.
I don't want to be a server at I don't want to be a server at McDonald's.
You know who they are?
No, I don't want to know.
They're all a part of Kyle Guy's family. And they're trying to keep an eye on you to make sure you're staying as far away as you can from the University of Virginia. All right, guys, we're going to wrap the show up. I want to thank everybody that listened to today. Thank Bobby, as always, Brian. Remember, you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Bobby Sheridan of the Sheridan Report, Brian Rauf from Fansided, Steve Risley from Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.